Hey guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about triangle congruence and learn a few different properties of congruent polygons. Okay, so the first thing I have for you, you need to know a few different terms from this section. Okay, so the first one is that geometric figures are congruent. Geometric figures are congruent if they are the same size and shape. Okay, if they are the same size and shape. Okay, so make sure you have that down. Okay, the next part is that corresponding angles and corresponding sides are in the same position in polygons and an equal number of sides. Okay, so corresponding angles and corresponding sides are in the same position in polygons. Corresponding just means the same. Okay, the last thing, two polygons are congruent if and only if their corresponding sides are congruent. Okay, so your triangles have the same size and shape, are congruent. Okay, so these are just three different things that you need to know about similar triangles. Okay, so some properties that you need to know. Okay, on your diagram here, you'll see that you have two different triangles, and they're congruent because you can see that their corresponding sides and their corresponding angles are going to be congruent. Okay? You'll notice that every single angle and every single side is the same on both of these triangles. So AB would be congruent, DE would be congruent, and AC and DF, all these things, all these sides, all these angles are corresponding and congruent. Okay, so that's why these triangles are similar. Okay, so if you look at this example of polygon, you'll notice that it has corresponding angles right here, and it also has corresponding sides. Okay, so the similar parts of the rectangle and the similar angles of that rectangle are going to be the same, so it's going to be congruent. Okay, so you need to have all parts, angles and sides be congruent. Alright, in this example, we're given the triangle PQR, and we're given the triangle STW. And we want to identify all the pairs of corresponding parts. Okay, so let's do the angles first. Okay, so all the angles that are congruent. Okay, we know that P is going to be congruent to S, so P is congruent to S. We also know that R is congruent to W, and we know that Q is congruent to T. And of course we know that all of these are angles. I didn't put that, but I should have. Okay, so those are all the angles that are congruent. Now let's look at the sides. Okay, we know that PQ would be corresponding to ST. So if we had our sides, we know PQ is congruent to ST. We know that PR is congruent to SW. PR is congruent to SW, and TW is congruent to QR. Okay, so those would be all the corresponding sides and angles of those two triangles. So all those things have to be congruent for those triangles to be congruent. All right, on this page I would like you to go ahead and look at U-try number 1. You're going to be comparing these two polygons, LMNP and EFGH, and I would like you to identify all the pairs of corresponding congruent parts. Okay, so you should have 4 angles and 4 sides. Okay, now we're going to kind of switch gears, and we're going to start solving for some variables. And in this case, we want to solve for x. Okay, so we know that these two triangles, ABC and DBC, are congruent. Okay, so we have ABC and we have DBC. Okay, we know these are congruent triangles. We know all the angles and all the sides are congruent. So, since we know that this is a 90-degree angle, we know that this angle right here, it must be congruent to that. Okay, so since they are the same, we can go ahead and set an equation up. Since we have 2x minus 16, we can set that equal to our 90. Okay, so let's solve this equation. We undo subtraction with addition. That would give us 2x equals 106. And if you undo multiplication with division, that would give you x equals 53. Okay, so we're just finding congruent parts and then being able to set those equal to each other. All right, second one. It's the same triangle, but we want to find the angle DBC. Okay, so we want to find this guy right here, this angle. Okay, well, we know up in the one before we found that x was equal to 53, so we can use that piece of information to our advantage. So let's go ahead and figure this out. Since this was 53, we can plug that in. And if you go ahead and reduce that, that's 106 minus 16, so you know that's equal to 90. So this is a 90-degree angle. Well, let's figure out the other part of this triangle. Since you know this one and this one, we can now figure out what this angle is. Okay, so if you have 90 and you add 49.3, that would give us 139.3. Okay, so since we know that's 139.3, we can then subtract that from 180 to get our missing angle. Okay, so that would give us, what, 40.7. Okay, so since this angle is our 40.7, we can then go ahead and assume that that angle is congruent to this angle since they're congruent triangles. So that missing angle, DBC, would end up being 40.7 degrees. Okay, so we're just using information that we already know to be true and finding our values that they're asking for. Okay, let's try a couple more here. This time we know that ABC is congruent to DEF. Okay, and we want to go ahead and solve for these triangles. We want to solve for x. Okay, well, are there different parts that are congruent? Well, we know that AB is indeed congruent to DE. Okay, they're similar parts of this lettering here. AB is congruent to DE, and we have 2x minus 2 and 6. So we know that those are equal to each other. Okay, so 2x minus 2 equals 6, and we just go ahead and solve that equation. So we have undo subtraction with addition. So 2x equals 8, and then undo multiplication with division. Okay, so our x would equal 4 in this case. Okay, so on our last one, we want to go ahead and find angle F. Okay, so we're wanting to find this guy. Okay, well, what angle is F actually congruent to? Okay, well, we know that angle F corresponds with a similar letter on the other triangle ABC. So since F is the last letter in its triangle, we know that it must be congruent to C. Okay, so we should be looking at these two guys. Okay, well, if we can find C, then we could easily find F. And since we know that ABC has two of our angles already solved for, we can go ahead and find angle C. Well, since you know that you have a 90-degree angle, a 53-degree angle, that would give us 143 degrees. And if we go ahead and subtract that from 180, that would give us 37 degrees. And since we know that these are similar triangles, and we would then know that C is congruent to F, so we know that F would also equal 37 degrees. Okay, so here's a few different problems for you to think about. Okay, make sure that you have all this written down, and if you need to re-watch this, you can. See ya.